Welcome to Uncorked and Unscripted, the podcast and video series that gives you VIP access to the unscripted stories of people I've met through events. In this episode of Uncorked and Unscripted, speaker and podcaster Tom Henderson joins us to discuss his impact on thousands of people across the country each year, his upcoming Men's Summit event, and his distinguished new look. Now uncork your favorite beverage and listen up as we spend the next half hour, plus maybe 20 minutes or so, unscripted. Hello and welcome back to Uncorked and Unscripted. I am your host, Addie Graham Kramer. Today we have a dear friend and client, but friend first with us here today. We've got Tom Henderson, who is also, friends, a podcast pro. So we are amongst celebrity pro podcasters with us today. Round of applause. Round of applause. You're not supposed to laugh at your own intro, Tom.
No, it was so well done. It was so well done. And anytime someone says that I'm professional at anything, I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I better button it up then.
Before we get started, okay, I want to hear, what's the story about the Goonies poster in the background?
Oh yeah, so that was because back when I was doing all the school assemblies, and I used to travel around the country to do school assemblies. As you know, we did a whole tour through Oregon, which I was also a youth pastor there for about 6 years, from 99 to 05. But myself and then Adam and Zach Seif, we did a whole tour through Oregon, and part of that was we went to Haystack Rock, which was actually in Cannon Beach, Oregon, not up in Astoria, Oregon, where the rest of the Goonies was filmed at the Astoria house. But we went and visited the house. We went and saw Haystack, which is, of course, where the pirate ship goes in Goonies.
Yeah. Interesting.
And after we got back from that, Addie, Adam and Zach came to my office with a Goonies poster, a bunch of photos that they had printed of our time together. They signed it. And so it's really a memory of where we've come from and the fun that we've had along the way.
Do you know, we had Sean Astin at one of our events who played Mikey.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I actually have a cell phone number. If you want me to call him, we could try to see if we can message him during this podcast.
Can we get him on and say, we just want to show you this poster?
Yeah, we just want to show it to you. When you're in Sioux Falls next, we'd like you to sign it. He was quite the interesting guy. My gosh, he's so uber talented. And most people don't remember him from Goonies. Most people remember him from like the Hobbit movies and
Rudy first. Rudy first, and then he was the best friend on the planet in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah,
or not? The Hobbit.
Yeah, solid dude. But before we dive into everything, part of what we ask every single guest on the podcast is more of the uncorked piece. We're going to get unscripted here in a little bit, but from the uncorked piece, if you were to be any drink of choice, what would be Tom Henderson and why?
Man, okay.
I know.
So that's a great question. For sure, it probably would depend on the time of day, to be honest with you, because I can be pretty highly caffeinated in the morning.
Hence, what's in the cup now? Coffee or water?
This is a cup of coffee right now. Partially because I woke up at 3:48 and my body said, "Hey, you're done sleeping." So I needed an afternoon Java shot. But here's the deal. So I would say, I'd say maybe an old fashioned. And the reason is because even though there's I'm always trying to be there's newness and cutting edge and what should we be moving into and all of that. There's a piece of me that just also loves tradition. And there's a piece of me that's very old fashioned as well. So I'd have to go with that.
Do you like smoky ones? Like really super smoky ones? No fancy.
Nope. Just the huge.
I love it. Good for you. Old fashions are good.
And I feel like wearing this coat, I feel like I probably should be having one right now.
The coat. The sport coat is very fitting, but I want to talk about the mustache. What is going on? I haven't seen you for a while, but the mustache is very distinguished. You kind of look like you should be on some Folgers commercial or something. The mustache and the coffee cup and the blazer. Talk to me about what's going on.
So here's the deal. So I've had many facial hair situations since you've known me.
And hats. You used to be into the hats.
And a lot of hats, yep. But I've had the handlebar mustache. Then I go with long sideburns, chops, and then beards and chops. Yeah. So, but Laura for the longest time has been she's like, I really want you to do a mustache. I'm like, I don't know if I'm just a straight mustache guy. and so she's been clamoring for it for a little while, Addie. And, the boys are coming home here. We're going to be able to spend a little time together. And, my boys are 23 and 20 now. And so they're coming home and we're going to be able to hang out for a few days, and they have mustaches. And so
oh my gosh. Does she know that? She knows it? She's seen them for a while?
Well, she knows they do, of course.
Okay.
Yes. But, because they FaceTime, mom all the time. They're great boys. And so I figured, you know what, this would be a great time to do it. We could take the Henderson mustache men photo. We could post it, all that
on
kind
your
of thing.
workouts, like when you guys do your holiday workouts and stuff.
When we do our workouts. So I came down on Saturday morning, just ready to go. And the funny thing is she didn't even notice. I mean, I went from here to this. I don't know if she's like totally just in cooking mode or what her deal is, but she didn't even notice. And then I went outside to do some stuff outside, and then she looked out the window, and then she's like, "Hey." That's what she noticed when I was about 50 feet away through a window. So like when I was standing in front of her, she didn't notice. But here's the crazy thing about it. So now I'm questioning why she wanted me to have this mustache, Addie. Because I went just prior to coming in, because I want to be loose for the podcast. I want to be loose, ready,
Feeling good.
Totally uncorked and unscripted. So I went and I had a massage, and I get a once a month massage because I'm bougie. And so the gal that I have given a massage, she looks at me and she goes, "You look like a young Tom Selleck." And I'm like,
"Oh yeah, you kind of do."
I'm like, hold on a second, because I know that Laura has always had a thing for Tom Selleck. And
oh my gosh,
it's just so convenient that my name is Tom. So now I have some questions. I
think Ariana, who's our producer, I think we need to do like a side-by-side at some point in this episode of what Tom Selleck and Tom Henderson look like side by side.
You may have to go back a few years because Tom Selleck's 79. Now, and I turned 49, so there's a 30-year age gap on this deal. But
Laura. That's awesome. I love it. Well, it's a conversation piece, if anything.
Right. Exactly. And I kind of felt like when I put this on today, I kind of felt a little bit like I was going to go sell a used car, which there's nothing wrong with selling used cars, but
you look distinguished, So as we're around the holidays here, there's going to be a lot of those commercials out there. It's the guy with the fireplace and, with his cigar, or not cigar, what's it? Pipe. And you kind of look like you could be the guy. You just need a dickie. You need to be in a dickie. You just need to be in a dickie.
Can we just stop for a moment, though, and just celebrate that in a very short period of time on this podcast, I've now been called professional and distinguished. So I just want to draw some attention to that and just sit in that for a moment and because I feel like I've arrived.
Put it in your journal. Okay, speaking of arrive, I met you for the first time way back in the day when you were doing assemblies. And I want you to share more about what ResGen is, because back when I first met you, it was called Restoration Generation back in the day. Yeah. And you came into 1 million cups. I think you had tight man pants on from the early 2000. No, it wasn't 2000, 2010-ish is time frame with not bedazzled pockets, but you know what I'm talking about. And then, but I think you had the hat on, and what do you call those hats? Not a fedora. What is that hat? What's that?
I still have them for sure. I still got one. I don't remember what you call it, but just got a little short bill on it.
Yeah, exactly. But you're very hip.
Kind of like a newsy hat.
Yeah. Very hip though. And I remember you talking about going to these assemblies and talking about God and all these things. And I was just so enamored. I'm like, wow, this guy does this for a living. This is a real thing. But tell people all about what Restoration Generation was and what ResGen is now. Why don't you share with everybody?
So really, first of all, it's just so good to be with you. It's so good to be with you and to be on your pod. It was such an honor to receive an invitation.
It's called the pod now? That's the hip. See, you are a professional. See, we just call it podcast because we're still back in the new. You just call it the pod. Well,
maybe I'm lazy. Maybe I'm just lazy and don't want to waste syllables. I'm not sure.
But learning a lot.
But anyway, so we started ResGen, or Restoration Generation, in 2010. And it was really after a bunch of years of working with teenagers and just recognizing that the majority of our students today knew nothing but broken relationships in their life. And that was my story from being a kid and without a dad around. And my dad was in prison throughout the entirety of my teen years and in my early 20s. And so, I had a real heart for those kids. And so, And the church, obviously, is always open for students. But one of the things that I always loved to do was to go to the students. And so that's why I would go into public middle schools and high schools and share a message about, anti-bullying, caring for each other. What does love look like in the middle school and high school setting? And what does it mean to even have healthy relationships as a teenager when maybe you haven't witnessed any of that in your life? And so we were able to do 28 states in 5 years, the first 5 years of ResGen and youth conferences and camps and retreats and festivals. And I used to travel on the road with bands, get on a tour bus and go and, they would do their concert and then I would share the gospel at night. And so that was a really amazing time for ResGen. And then it just kind of slowly but surely morphed into what it is today.
And what is that today?
Oh, well, I'm glad you asked.
So you're getting more distinguished by the minute. Literally, I'm looking at the clock countdown by the minute.
2016, we did our very first men's event. Really because, again, one of the thoughts that I had as I was meeting with all these kids and teenagers was, I can try to help as many students as I can. And that's what I was driven to do. But at the end of the day, sometimes I'm sending them home to, in an environment that maybe it's not very, healthy or relationally sound or whatever. So I was like, what if we did something that could maybe help the dads? After hearing so many stories about how their dad wasn't around, either emotionally, physically, spiritually, or whatever. And again, that was part of my story. So I was like, let's try one. So we did the first one with just over 100 dudes and with no intention of doing another one, Addie.
And here we are.
And here we are now. We're approaching year 9 with over 1,150 men sold out here in Sioux Falls. Last year we had 19 simulcast sites. We'll have over 20 this year. And at the same time, we're preparing for year 9. We are also preparing for year 10 in 2026. We added a marriage event called Date Night Comedy, which you and Drew
Just so
love.
fun. So fun.
And so we've done that since now we're in our 7th year of doing that. We do men's retreats. We do men's lunches. And then I started corporate speaking 3 years ago. And it's just been pretty fun to see how God continues to grow it.
And I mean, amidst all of that, you're a part of all these lives that are being changed, but you're also writing a book. You are talking about that book. You're integrating those pieces into your conversations. And how has that also shaped you in that process of the book? Like, what does that look like for you?
Well,
Heart Not Hype, right? Heart Not Hype, if I remember.
Well, Heart Not Hype, yeah. So, I mean, we released that one in 2013, but then we're working on a refresh of that. But then I'm also now with, my dad recently passed, and so just figuring out what does that look like to tell the story in a very hopeful and helpful way for people that still honors the relationship with my dad that was restored. And so I think that the process of even just putting things in between covers of a book, it's, the spoken word can only be received for so long, right? But the written word lasts for so much longer. And so for someone that is struggles with perfectionism, it's been a real interesting process to just release control in some ways and just say, okay, it's not about having every word perfect, or we just want it to be honest and real and meaningful for people. And so if it's meaningful to me, and I present it in a way that is hopefully meaningful and helpful for others, I just feel like I'm becoming more and more shaped in the process. And just
for you.
Just hopefully, I just want to help people. That's it. Yeah. I just want to help people.
Is that what you always, like, what did you want to be when you were a kid? Like, is this the path that you wanted to take?
No, when I wanted to be a doctor.
Okay.
Originally,
like, you love love science.
I wanted to be a pediatrician. No, I just thought it would be a great way. To be clear, I was decent at school, and I was a pretty smart dude, but I was really good at relationships. And so I would build relationships with teachers and figure out, okay, so how do I, I got to know my stuff, obviously, but how do I make sure that that I'm doing what needs to be done? If I got an A, like a B plus. What do I got to do to get that up to an A?
Good for you. Good for you.
But I really wanted to be a doctor because I thought that was going to be a way to just make great money, in all honesty. And so that was the driving force. But that if that's your why for going to med school, there's a lot easier ways to do that. One of the not easy way to do it is just to go into ministry, but at the same time, um, God radically got a hold of my life in between my freshman and sophomore year at USD. Actually, and then that's when I knew that I needed to hang up the kind of the stethoscope dreams and say I just want to help students and help people in the way that I was really helped throughout the entirety of my teen years. And I had so many fill-in dads in my life and people that helped our family financially because we had nothing.
Sure.
And so that's how that how that happened.
Do you feel like when you were that time at USD, well, first of all, go Yotes, which is great. But I had to say it, but do you feel like you're like, right now we're at church kind of going through the like Noah and the flood and preparing and all the things and I mean, truly everything. Like, were you at a flood? Like, do you feel like you were in some type of flood at that point in your life? Like, did you experience something pivotal, oh my gosh, in that time frame that like spurred something in you to say, you know what, this is not my path. I know that there's more out there for me. Like, was there something that you experienced?
Yeah. And Laura, my wife, whom was a big part of that. We've been now married almost 29 years. But so in between my freshman and sophomore year, I was chosen to be a part of this musical tour that traveled around the country up through Canada, all the way across to the Pacific Northwest and down through Texas. We did 50 shows in 60 days.
Like Up with People type of thing?
That kind of thing, except there were 6 of us in the tour. So it was just, 3 guys, 3 gals, singing, dancing, acting, the whole thing.
Awesome.
But the whole message was about God. But I was chosen to be on it. And I said yes to being on it because I just love performing and I love being on a stage. Well, about 3 weeks into that tour, Addie, I mean, and I was on the tour for completely it was all about self. It was all about self-service.
Sure.
Well, Laura and I had just begun dating a few months prior to that tour. She trained me as a server at TGI Fridays, by the way. Lots of great stories there. But
lots of flair, I'm sure. Lots of flair.
But this was back in the day where there was no email, there was no phones, right? And she had actually write a letter on a piece of paper, put it in an envelope, put this thing called a stamp on it.
That's what we did back in the day, kids. That's what we did.
That is. I know. Think about how hard we had it, people.
Gosh.
But she would have to think ahead as to where we were performing next. And so that letter could be waiting for me.
Oh, so awesome.
So she wrote me every day and I wrote her back every day. And about 3 weeks into the tour, Addie, I got a letter from her. And the letter said this, you are on this tour for completely the wrong reasons. You're on this tour for the glorification of yourself and not to bring glory to God. So you have 2 choices. I mean, she just laid it out. And Laura, ma'am, she's so sweet and just loving. And I'm not going to say timid because she's definitely not timid with me, but she's just so sweet. And she said, you have 2 choices. Either A, you quit this tour because you are going to be a detriment to the team, or B, you get your heart right and you turn motivation to be about the Lord.
Wow.
And so I sat with that for a little while.
I just got goosebumps. Truly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I went through all a range of emotions, like upset and who are you to judge me? But then also like fear of, well, what would it look like if I did drop off the tour or whatever? But she was right. And so I just said, okay, at that moment, I need to, make sure that my life and the motivation of my life is about what God wants and not necessarily what I want. And so obviously that's been a lifelong journey, right? Because it's very easy for me to slip into selfishness or whatever. But, and then I came back from that tour and I made the decision that I couldn't go back to USD, not because the education wasn't good, but because it wasn't a positive choice for me because I was in a fraternity. At that time, I did not go to class that much. I really enjoyed the fraternity life. And I just knew it wasn't a good place to go back to because I would slip back into that mode of operation. And so that's when I changed to USF, changed my major to religious studies and psychology. And that's where I got on the new trajectory.
Wow, incredible. I think there's always like these points in people's lives where, yes, you have these little floods and what is God saying to us during those times, but how do we also, how do we get out of that flood? Like what do we need to do to survive it? But then also worship him for allowing us to pass through those pieces. And so many of us have these little floods. And that's why I asked just personally, like, was it a flood that happened for you? And for me, like I grew up, my mother was like helped in Bible school, and I would religiously be there at Sundays, like always in my mother's very strict Missouri Synod Lutheran woman. But I didn't really feel like I don't know. I went through so many emotions with God over the years, and was I in, was I not? Like, am I a believer? I always believed there was just something else out there, and it wasn't a sole focus of mine. Well, as you know, I got sick in 2019.
Yep.
And my life changed completely. And that was a big flood of my life to figure out, like, am I healthy? Am I not? What does my company look like? What does my family look like? What about all the people that we serve? Oh my goodness. Like, there were just all the things. And I remember praying so hard to say, like, I will do whatever it takes and I'm following you. And since that day, I mean, I've given my whole life back to God, and we are one. And there is not a day that goes by that I do not miss my morning devotionals. I've just truly, my whole life has changed, but it was not always like that. And even to this day, I'm just so proud of it and proud of my journey. And yeah, when I start telling people about it and they're like, oh, here she goes again, but I don't care. I don't care, because it has truly changed my life. It's changed my life with my boys. I love getting Will excited to go to church, and we're bringing other boys into the mix. And it's just I'm not having other boys. I don't mean that, but like other boys I'm bringing to church. That sounded really weird, but it's just so fun to be able to share the story and to share these Bible stories, to figure like, this is why we're here. And so the last 4 weeks we've been again studying the whole part of Noah and the flood, and what does it look like, and what do you do when you're in it, and how does it look like when God's like, give me the animals and sacrifice the animals for me, and you're like, what do I do? I've been in this flood for 40 days, and all that. It's just very interesting to be able to share those pieces. And I personally have been going through this flood part with mother-in-law recently, and all of life, and it's the ups and downs of life. Yes, it is. But I've never, not once, been a negative Nancy or a negative Nellie since that day back in 2019. Things have just drastically changed for me. So that's why I wanted to know, like, what was your change and what was your trajectory?
Yeah,
like what did that look like?
That's such a great story, and it's your story, which makes it, because that's the reality is we all have, our story and how God met us at the point in which we needed. And one of the things that I know that you've noticed as well is that God always brings other people around us. And for me, I look at the faithfulness that I've seen through who God has surrounded me with. Whether it be from the time I was a kid, who we had Christmas presents delivered to our house when I was 10 years old because we didn't, otherwise we wouldn't have had them, to the Phil and dads I had as a teenager, to, the friendships that we had in Oregon, to now the rock solid, men and women that are in our lives now. And so for you, I know that the relationships, and you're so good at relationships and friendships, but what drives that is a genuine care for people.
Yeah.
And so I tell my boys all the time who again, whom and 23 and 20, I said, listen, boys, you can go and be anything you want out in the world. I mean, love God and love people. And the reality is if you truly care for people, if you like truly care for them, look them in the eye, have conversation, I mean, not put yourself on the back burner and focus on others, you will be successful no matter what you do and no matter where you go. And so that's where I just get so excited about that while we were designed to, need and have that relationship with God, God also knows that we have a need for relationships with people. And that's super important.
Yeah. I mean, my life completely changed from that day. But even when I was at USD, I just knew there was something more for me. I'm not going to blame USD on our changes here of life.
No, go Yotes. Go Yotes.
Yeah, go Yotes. Go Yotes. But I think there's just always a purpose, and we are following and serving him every day. And if you are genuine in those relationships and conversations, it's just easy, right? Like it's not hard. It doesn't need to be hard, but I feel like sometimes people think, and there's times where I've questioned it, where this is so complicated, right? Like, and God is not trying to complicate things for us. And it's not on our time, it's on his time, but it's being the genuine and being in those conversations, like you're saying, is so important. But
yeah.
Do you think God appreciates all of your love for Costco? Do you feel like?
Well, I think that God created me
That's
to
what I
be
was
me.
waiting for, seeing like a Costco shirt today, to be very
Oh yeah.
honest with you.
Oh yeah. I could have done that. I think that there's a lot of things that I do, and maybe a couple things that you do, that he just looks at and just kind of says, "Oh, Tom, you're such a goofball." My love for Costco may be one of those.
Or your pool. Okay. I'm going to ask to have you send some pictures here, because for all of our episodes, we like to preview like who the guests are and things like that. If you do not send us a picture of the pool or the Costco, we might not air this episode, Tom Henderson.
Yeah. No, listen, you got it. I mean, yeah, I mean, the inflatable pool has become something. I remember when Isaiah was probably about 16, 17 years old, and we've had an inflatable pool in our backyard we buy a new one each year again, because I'm a high roller. And so I spend $30 a year on an inflatable pool, and then Laura and I will sit in there on Saturdays, and we'll just chill and talk and have a great time. And so, but Isaiah would constantly get people coming up to him in high school and say, "Oh, I saw your dad posted a picture of him in the pool," and he looks at me and goes, "Dad, I hate what this pool has become. I hate that everybody loves it so much."
It's like the
But
topic of again, it's like the mustache. It is a topic of conversation because you know what? People relate. That's the deal. That's the thing. I didn't have an inflatable pool. Do you remember those plastic pools back like when we
totally,
grew up, where you'd
totally.
like scrape your knee or your whole leg
Right.
trying to dive in because the thing would collapse on the side? I mean, it was hard.
It was I mean, again, we had no email and phones. We had to send mail in a mailbox, and we cut ourselves on plastic pools. I mean, we had it so hard when we were younger, Addie, and one of the hardest days of my adult life was when my youngest son Chase stopped volunteering to be a lifeguard in the pool videos I would make,
Oh
and he would say, "Dad, I don't want to do that anymore. They're embarrassing." I'm like, "They're funny. People love
that
them."
is hilarious. I have to share the story. My oldest will probably kill me for saying it, but Will said, this is a couple weeks ago. He goes, "Mom, can I come to your office and get your debit card? Because I need gas." I said, "Okay. Yep, that's fine." I'm like, "Well, you have cash. Just go inside." And he goes, "Oh," he's like, "I'm not going inside to pay for my gas, Mom. That's so embarrassing." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, bro." Like there was nothing at the pumps. There was
Embarrassing.
there was nothing there. You had to go in. Sometimes, do you remember you also had to go in to tell them that you were going to buy a gas, then go
Totally.
pump it? I
Right.
mean, no, it won't do it. So you talk about like no cell phones, all the embarrassing thing. Yeah, pumping gas or having to pay for gas inside is embarrassing these days. So
Well, and
times
if
have changed.
he probably would have loved Oregon then, because in Oregon, you can't pump your gas. So, like, they just finally this year, I think it was 2024, where they finally said, you can now pump your own gas, but you couldn't get out because that's the way they kept people employed. But with low unemployment rates and
Yeah,
whatever, they're like, you can
incredible.
finally pump your own gas. But it was a nightmare because sometimes the lines would be so long, and there's like one person out there that's trying to get all the nozzles in the cars and whatever. And then you got the lady or the dude that can't figure out how to pop his gas tank. And you're like, "I just
My
want some
gosh.
gas. I'm at Fred Meyer. Please, let's go."
Oh
So
my gosh. Well, I love your love of Costco big time. And I want to let people know that last year, I think it was last year on stage. Do you wear it last year on stage at the Men's
yeah,
Summit? Okay.
yeah.
And I'm going to quote verbatim what your exact words were. Do you remember what your words were? We can say it probably at the same time.
I want to hear what you. I want to hear what
I
you have to
got
say.
the dog in me.
Oh yeah.
And you the hot dog, like you and actually it's not a Costco shirt, it's a Kirkland shirt though, right? Kirkland, to be safe, right? Or to be fair.
Yeah, yeah, my buddy bought me that for my birthday, and it said, "Yeah, I've got that dog in me." It's a
A
picture of the
picture of the
Costco hot
Costco
dog,
hot dog.
and so I wore it underneath the sport coat for, I don't know, some announcements or sending people into break or whatever, and so it was one of those deals where I'm like, "You know what? It just has to happen." And I said, "Is this dumb? Like, should
Nope,
I?"
not
And
dumb.
then Addie, you were like, "No, you have to do
Yeah,
this.
it is. It's part of you. Like the pool is part of you.
It's
It's
part
part
of you."
it's part of you. Maybe this episode could be sponsored by Costco. Maybe we could
I
connect with the locals.
I've tried. You know what? It's my dream. And I met with the general manager at the Sioux Falls Costco. I told you I've been doing these corporate talks, and we have a goal of 20 corporate talks in 2025. And one of my dreams is to do one for
On
Costco.
there? Wow.
I think if you will see a celebration like no other if you see a picture of me in front of like a bunch of Costco employees giving a talk.
Oh, I love it. We got to make it happen.
I know. Let's do it. Come on. I believe somebody that can get me in there. I know you do.
You probably do. We'll figure that out. But you're doing corporate talks all over the country though, right? I mean, like things have just changed a lot for you, and you're part of the John Maxwell team. Like talk to us about what that's looked like for you, because that's a big transformation that you've really dove into over these last few years as well.
Well, yeah. So the reality is that I say this, at the end of the day, we're all older teenagers. Okay. We all still want to we wonder, are we going to be laughed at today? Am I wearing the right thing? Am I going to get invited to happy hour or lunch or whatever? Right. And so just like I love doing school assemblies and going to schools and meeting kids on their turf, I love going into companies and meeting employees and corporate staff on their turf and bringing a message that will really help develop people and their culture, and to create a life-giving environment in the workplace where, again, a lot of us, we spend more time with our fellow employees than we do our families, right? So how can we build stronger relationships at work? And all of that even came about because one of my friends who I'd been mentoring multiple years, he said, Tom, I really want you to come and speak to my company. And I said, yeah, I don't do that. And he said, no, I think you do, because we need your voice. We need your message. I'm like, yeah, I don't do that. And he's like, no, I'm telling you, you do. And so I've been able to work with that company 4 times.
Good for you.
And we've been able to just open up a whole new audience with a real positive message. The message, Maxwell puts it this way, and I totally stole it because he said I could, is it's rooted in faith, but not referenced. So everything that you hear is very positive. It's nothing that you would say like, oh, that totally came from the Bible, because I don't exactly quote scriptures, but you'd be like, oh, that's totally foundational to humans being good humans, developing a caring, loving work culture, still calling people to excellence.
Yeah.
Still calling people to, do what they do, the highest level, crush numbers, do all the things. But how do we create joy in the workplace on the way? Basically, we're trying to create every company to be like the event company, where every day is a celebration over there. I just my birthday's coming up, and I want to have a birthday party in the Tom Henderson meeting room. Okay.
Wow. Not yesterday, but just recently we did a theme where it was Jonas Brothers theme, microphones, walk-up music. I mean, yeah, I don't know what your theme would be. I would have to think about that. For those that are listening, if you ever get the opportunity to come to our headquarters in downtown Sioux Falls, we actually have a whole waiting area that we coined the Tom Henderson waiting area. And there are 2 chairs. They're just right there. Tom's one person, but there's 2 chairs.
Yeah, well, I needed to.
Just in case. But we did, like, people typically, when they come into meetings, a lot of them are Zoom meetings, or they're just quick in and out. Tom likes to sometimes come a little early, sit down, relax. So did Jeff, just hang out for a while. Sometimes Jeff would come here 30 minutes prior to the meeting. So we need to create like a seating area, which I'm not dogging on Jeff. I love it. I love promptness.
Yeah. And he does. He's like, hey, what time's the meeting? 2:30. He goes, okay, I'm going to be there 2:10. Make sure I'm on time. And that's just him.
There's a whole waiting area now dedicated to Tom Henderson. But I don't know what your theme would be. That'd be very interesting to see.
So I got a brand new corporate talk called Being an All Heart Leader. And I just did an event for Chris Hintz, who you just had on the pod not too long ago, for their conference, the non-conference. And so he had me come in and he said, what do you want for your walk-up music? And I said, that's a great question. So I said, I don't know, this is kind of your genre, the whole music world. So why don't you just pick something? So I was actually at an event in Atlanta, and he sends me an email and says, how about all these songs? Well, they were all Bryan Adams songs that were like about the heart, right? They were like, like these, and they were great lyrics, but I was speaking right after lunch, and I'm like, these Bryan Adams songs are going to put these people to sleep.
Snooze fest.
And so I said, how about Motley Crue, Kickstart My Heart?
Oh, yeah.
And it was so fun. So like when he said, hey, introduce you to Tom Henderson, all of a sudden the electric guitar comes, and then it was so funny because that company that I told you that I've now been back to 4 times, they had a DJ at their last conference too, as their 130-year celebration that I got to speak at. And they introduced me and said, hey, Tom is not just a guest, he's really a part of our family, which was very meaningful to me because that's what we try to create is ongoing relationships. And because I just feel like it's meaningful. And then they get to know me, I get to know them, and then I can really help take them to the next level in every area. Well, so as he introduced me, the DJ hit Eminem's song, Here He Is, Back Again. And it was so funny and so cool, So
I love
don't know.
it.
Maybe my theme could be a cross between Motley Crue and Eminem. I'm not sure.
I have pictured you like an Imagine Dragons kind of guy.
Oh, I would love to see them. Are they still touring?
I don't think so.
I don't know. They'll have a reunion tour soon, but
probably.
But all those guys that are just so cool and
like Coldplay, Imagine Dragons, they're all awesome.
Yeah. I mean, 21 Pilots when they were in town. I mean, that was such a killer show. That was so good.
Walk-up musics are always fun. It's always fun from my side also to be able to help craft what those songs are with the team and the audio team. It's just, it's fun. Or when you least expect it, if you're we did it once actually, it was probably Chris Hintz actually. And we had a financial person kind of get up on stage, and it was kind of a boring conference, to be very honest with you. It was kind of boring. And I remember he played the Money, Money, Money song because this guy was walking up and we're all like it was stuffy,
yeah.
But it kind of livened it up a little bit.
Those
guys know.
They knew what they needed. What's your favorite concert you've ever gone to?
I will say Weezer, way back in the day.
Oh man,
Weezer, no doubt. It was outside at Exarban in Omaha.
Weezer, and they were with No Doubt, or just No Doubt it was Weezer?
Okay. No doubt it was Weezer. Funny. No, it was Weezer and then No Doubt. It was so good. My mom called me into school sick when I really wasn't sick. She was pretty hip. She still is pretty hip. And left school and went to that concert. It was awesome. What about you? What was your favorite?
Oh, when I was younger, I remember going to DC Talk. That was pretty amazing. Oh, yeah. But this past summer, we went to Morgan Wallen at US Bank Stadium.
Oh, killer.
And dude, it was so good.
Dude.
It was.
He's a great performer. I've heard. I haven't seen him, but he's a great performer.
And when you have 60-some thousand people and all the production and all that kind of stuff, and surprisingly, concerts sometimes it's hard to. And to be real, I'm turned 49 here, like I said, so maybe my hearing isn't what it used to be, and being able to distinguish the words is what it used to be, but. It was actually really, really good. And we had all these bracelets on that
that lit up to the
flashed at different times with the beats. And so I'd never been there. So that was it's probably my favorite, but it's also because it's the most recent, because I am turning 49. I probably, forgot all the other ones.
You're going to start wearing earplugs. Earplugs.
Yeah.
Could happen.
Yeah.
I don't know if I ever told you, but since we're talking concerts, not my proudest parent moment. I think I told you this, but I took Calvin to Snoop Dogg when he was in town. Not appropriate for children. Not appropriate for children at 10 years old. But Drew and I and Will and Calvin all went. And we're like, gosh, this is like reliving the day. Snoop Dogg, all the songs. And it was not
So
good.
Was he a part of the 90s?
No, this 90s? Was on his own. Nope, he was here.
Was on his own.
He was here with Co Wetzel, some other country dude or whatever. But there was a lot of activity on the stage with some ladies, and that to explain to a 10-year-old at that time was not appropriate. Or what's that smell and all the things.
Yeah.
We are big concert people, so I love it.
And I think, but that's so important. Here's why. So one of the things I do is I do a lot of parent stuff too, and I talk with parents all the time about stuff is great, and they need stuff, they need shoes, they need the things. But when you can give your kids experiences that are different, those are what the best memories are made of, because laughter comes as you think back. And oh, Mom, can you remember when you took us to that show? That was totally inappropriate.
The strippers were on the stage.
Right.
What is that?
That's a memory. It's a core memory in their mind that it becomes the story that they tell later on, of saying that my mom got me out of school to go to Weezer I know.
Now my mom,
it's the cool who's still really cool, took me to Snoop Dogg. And so Laura and I are big into just figuring out, okay, even now with our boys, okay, they're 20 and 23, but and so it's different because they're adults and all that kind of stuff. But here's another parenting tip that I always love to share, is just the reality is that you'll be parents of adult kids longer than you will be parents of normally what we call
you're
kids, right?
absolutely true.
And so how do we continue to keep that in mind, even during those tough seasons, maybe those flood seasons, with our kids? Because, raising kids is tough. In our world, it's tough, and there's challenges, but having that perspective of saying, man, you know what, I'm going to be parents of my adult kids so much longer. And so how do I continue to just pour into my kids, know that this season is short? Yeah, the days may seem long, but those years are short, and just continue to pour into them in that way. I think that's a life-giving statement for us to remember, especially in the hard days.
Well, see, this is why you're pro pod, and distinguished, because and you've lived it. You've lived it. That's what I love. I mean, you always have really good advice, and sometimes it's unsolicited, but it's good. It's good. It's good. It's good. Good advice.
That reminds me of another great statement, Addie, it's unsolicited advice comes across as criticism.
Oh,
And
I don't think that, though.
And so I do feel like as long as we put it through that filter and saying, and I know you don't, so that I could throw that little nugget out there for you, and you'd be like, I'll take that as gold. I won't take that as coal. But so we got to be cautious with that. And the relationship, of course, is key, right? Because if you've earned that right to say, hey, can I just share something with you? That's such an important piece. But man, I'm telling you what, we've covered a lot of ground today.
A lot of ground. What's next for you? Like, what's next for you? We've got Men's Summit coming up here soon, all over the country. We've got local. Like, who's joining us this year?
Yeah, the biggest thing I guess right now that we're gearing up for is the ResGen Men's Summit, year 9.
We've been a part of it for 5 years.
Yes, that's correct. You started in 2019.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So yeah, we've got that February 1st, 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. So the easiest way to find more about that is hit up our newly designed website, just launched about 10 days ago, resgen.org. And then all the information about date night, which happens a month after that. That's 2 nights, Thursday night and Friday night. Both nights are the same. The best thing about both of those is that you can stream them from anywhere you are. So that's awesome. And it actually, so like just attend in person, it's like $40 to come to the Men's Summit. But if you live stream it, you could just get one $40 live stream ticket and then put a bunch of dudes in your house
together. Yeah.
And then same thing with date night. Like, I love it when couples say, hey, we want to do this in different parts of the country. And they bring a bunch of couples over, they do some popcorn, they uncork a bottle of wine or, grab some Sprite or whatever and have date night. And then after that, it's just more podcasts, more speaking. And then already gearing up for year 10, which is going to be big.
I know, I'm excited.
We're very, very excited about what God has in store there. And so we're grateful.
And I think for me, like the Men's Summit, my first year even being a part of it, I remember, and I've shared this with you before, but being backstage, and I remember tearing up. Like, I just knew how important this event was, but you don't know until you're in it. And even as a female backstage, it's not, yes, it's obviously geared towards the dudes, how to be better fathers and husbands and sons and community leaders, all the things, right? But it's also like us as women need to get the dudes there too. We need to get them there because obviously we want them to be better, but also to grow with each other, and the unification that the Men's Summit does for all the thousands of dudes across the country that are a part of it is pretty spectacular. And that you don't see a lot of. There's a lot of lady events out there, which I love, but from my perspective, you have this room full of 1,000+ dudes and in all these other parts of the country that are coming together for this one purpose, to focus on themselves. I think is pretty special, because sometimes us as ladies, I'm probably going to get bashed on this one, but I feel like we don't focus a lot on the guys. Like, it's all about us and our emotions sometimes. And sometimes we forget about the guys out there. And I think I said sometimes, not all the time, but I feel like that event is one that I will continue to preach as long as I can, because it is impactful, not just because we're a part of it and we're huge advocates, but because it is what it is. It's so awesome. Kudos
I really
to you and the team.
that.
My gosh.
That means a lot. And having you guys a part of it, since 2019, has really that's been a gift. That's been a real gift because you've helped us think differently, take it to the next level in different areas. I remember, last year, I was really struggling with my confidence in certain areas of my messaging and like, man, should I even do this? And, Paige, she was kind of our event designer for a couple of years. I remember her speaking confidence into me and saying, no, Tom, I think you need to do that. It's going to be really good and effective. And so that's the beauty, again, of long-term relationship as well, because there's a history of the event company and ResGen working together on stuff. And so there's a knowledge that you have, like, you know me, like my quirks and all the different things that I think about in the process. And so it's been such a great thing. So I'm really, your words are not taken lightly.
Well, thank you.
It's very, very kind. Yeah. And I'm just grateful that something that started as, hey, let's just try it once and see what happens, is turned into what it is. And not because we can say this is what it's become, but because it's actually helping men and understand their emotions and helping men understand, hey, you know what, we can have healthy marriages. I can get over my past mistakes and move into, better relationships with my kids. And I really can lead my team at work, or I can be a better employee. And that I'm not have to compartmentalize and segment my life. So
you don't know until you're there. That's the thing. Like Tom and I could be talking about this like one after another, and what I experience as a female on the other side, but what the dudes experience until you are there, you have no idea. That's the thing, which I think is pretty special. And I will personally buy whoever reaches out to me. I'll buy them a ticket to go because it is so important. I think it's a great investment. It's not an expensive investment to be able to focus that half day on each other.
Well, we just talked about experiences, didn't we, Addie? We just talked about experiences. And the reality is that you can dial up a message on YouTube, right? You can dial up, there's phenomenal communicators. And I think we bring a lot of great communicators, a lot of great content to the stage. But watching through your laptop, on a YouTube video, on a Wednesday, is just different than being in the room and feeling it, like you said. And so the temptation sometimes just, I got to get every note down, but sometimes it's more important for us to take notes on how we feel. And what is this? What am I feeling at this moment? And that's just not at a conference. I think that's just in different parts of our life.
Agreed.
Because again, it's the feelings that we remember, and how did this make me feel? And then how do I now allow that to continue to have not just impact, but deeper influence on what happens after I leave this mountaintop experience? Because we don't live our lives on the mountaintops. We live our lives on the plains of normalcy and on the valleys of challenges a lot of times.
Yeah.
So how does what we experience here really flow into this, so that then now that creates lasting change?
Well, I'm excited for you. I'm excited for what's to come here in February. I'm excited for year 10. Big things. Karaoke from the stage, maybe from you. I don't know. We'll see.
Oh, you don't know. Hey, who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? And and of course, listen, at year 10, that's where you can really pull out all the stops. So we got a full year to plan this thing. We're gonna hit a home run. We're gonna knock year 9.
I hear breathers, jugglers. We'll get them all.
No, there's the fine line. There's the fine line of what's enough and what's too much. And so we'll make sure that we don't cross it.
We'll try to push a little bit. We'll see. Okay. Before we wrap, Ariana has these questions here. Look at all these. There's a whole stack. I'm not going to ask you all these questions, but I don't know what are on these questions except for if I've asked them thus far. So I'm going to draw one. This is the unscripted part.
Oh, okay.
It's already been unscripted, but this is a fun one. If each of your this is a long one, so pay attention.
Okay.
Pay attention. If each of your fingers on one hand could dispense a drink for the rest of your life, and these were the only drinks that you could drink, what would your 5 drinks be?
Wow, you started me with a drinking question.
I know.
And now you're
like, look, I'm drinking water in a cat cup. I don't even like cats.
Yeah.
Cat cup. Halloween.
You're not a cat lady.
No, not a cat lady. Nope.
Yeah, you're not a cat lady.
Okay. I want to know.
That's a good question.
Do you need water?
Oof. Well, for sure, water. You have to have water.
There's one.
Okay. Can I? Because technically, I can add something to the water and make coffee, right? See, look at, I'm already trying to bend the rules. I'm trying to bend this rules. Is one of the fingers Insta-hot? Because that's going to be key.
This sounds like the teacher episode of Getting the A. So
it is,
I'll let
I know it is. Well, Ariana's breaking out like the 5-part question here. So,
okay. Long the question is.
My goodness.
Ari, good job.
And you know I'm a conversation starter person. Yes. I mean, I like to, even
this is a good conversation starter. Use that from now on.
Conversation starter. I'm totally stealing this. Okay, so water for sure. I still love a good bowl of cereal, so I'd have to have milk for sure.
Like dairy milk, cow milk?
Yeah. Yep. 2%, please. So that would be important. Orange, vanilla cream, Polar, or like one of those seltzers.
Like seltzer waters? Okay. Yeah.
Seltzer waters. So I know but it's important because it's seltzer. And I would say, I do like a good brown ale every once in a while. So I probably would go with.
Are you a stout person too? Do you like dark stout? Oh, I love stouts. Love it.
And then a Breckenridge Autumn Ale is what I would say. That's probably that's like my favorite. And boy, see, this is the problem because I love having lemonade in my pool. So, but can I add lemonade to the water? That's what my questions. Like, I have so many questions.
No, I'm going to say no. If you had to choose between lemonade or coffee, what would it be?
Oh, coffee, 100%.
Okay.
That's a pretty good, yeah.
Good.
Did I pass?
Yeah, pass.
Did I pass?
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
Did I get an A after, or at least an A minus?
We'll see. A minus. But thank you for being my friend, first and foremost. I am proud of you, all that you've built, all the lives that you've been a part of changing, and I'm glad to be able to take a side seat to watch it all happen. So thank you, truly.
Oh, well, it's an honor to be your friend, to be classified in that grouping. It is a true honor. And it was, like I said at the beginning, it was an honor to receive the invitation to hang out with you. I'll say yes to that anytime. But then when we can, banter back and forth in this type of setting, man, who would say no to that?
We're good. Well, for those that are tuning in, be sure to check back every other Thursday for a new episode. We will air on Apple Podcast and Spotify and YouTube. So until then, cheers. Thanks for listening to this episode of Uncorked and Unscripted. Make sure to follow and rate this podcast wherever you're watching or listening. Stay connected with us by following us on social media at Uncorked Unscripted on Instagram and Facebook, and at Uncork Unscript on Twitter and TikTok. And if you really enjoyed this episode, do us a huge favor and send it to a friend. See you soon. Bye.